Hi, I'm Bob, and this green backdrop is not an invitation to Forrest Gump me into embarrassing historical photographs and/or alarmingly detailed Overwatch pornography, you sick fucks. Finding Dory is a weird entry for Pixar in that it feels like it should actually be a lot darker than it is. The studio is known for dropping pitch-dark, emotionally devastating moments into material that looks on the surface to be light and gentle, but here they've taken both a scenario and setting that feels like it should be harrowing and bleak and instead have built it into a story that's mostly about comic momentum and offbeat character skits. Now maybe that's a conscious decision, since if the film ever slowed all the way down, the situations the characters find themselves in would read as existentially horrifying rather than merely exciting, as the main characters find themselves flung from literally one life or death situation to the next for about the entirety of the story. It's the kind of constant peril Pixar usually reserves for the Toy Story crew, except Nemo and company are significantly less resilient than your average action figure. Now, if you've managed to forget in the well over a decade's worth of time since the original, Finding Nemo was at least partially about living with disability, i.e. Nemo's misformed smaller fin, Marlin's overprotective parenting in regards to it. Dory doubles down on this theme by revealing that Ellen DeGeneres' title character's forgetfulness is actually chronic short-term memory loss, i.e. a childhood disability of her own, and making her the main character this time out in case you were confused by the title. Now, when you think about it, that's a pretty bold choice. Hey kids, remember the funny comedy relief character from last time? Well, that funny affect you found so amusing is actually a serious condition they've been struggling with their entire lives. I mean, it's like finding out the fucking Minions are war refugees or something. To the film's credit, it basically works, in as much as Dory is still funny, even though now there's an added layer of poignancy to her oddball behavior. I mean, she's still the silly character, but now we understand that it's a survival mechanism too. It's the kind of stunt characterization that any other filmmaking team would probably congratulate themselves for spending the entirety of production time trying to get right, but for Pixar, it's just the starting point. The big idea plot-wise this time around is that a random accident triggers an actual memory in Dory, namely that she was separated from her parents as a baby and was searching in vain for them for so long that she actually forgot about them until just this moment. That's dark. Newly invigorated with purpose, she sets out to find them with Marlin and Nemo in tow in order to keep her focused on the goal. The ultimate target is a marine life sanctuary in California, and in the first of the film's pleasant surprises, they pretty much skip right ahead to them getting there, and then the bulk of the movie actually takes place there, i.e. in new, fresh surroundings. How about that? Granted, it's a bit jarring, and I guess we're supposed to accept that since they already did it once, crossing the whole fucking ocean is no big deal the second time around, and while I'm glad Albert Brooks is back, it's kind of disappointing that they resort to having Marlin forget, however briefly, that he spent the whole first movie learning how not to be a dick in order to contrive a reason for Dory to be separated from the other two, so she can go on her own in the Institute. As contrivances go, though, it's worth it for the sheer inventiveness of getting to figure out how tiny oceanic fish are going to navigate a decidedly man-made, mostly dry land space. Plus, it offers a chance to introduce fun new characters like Caitlin Olsen as a whale shark, Ty Burrell as a beluga, and Ed O'Neill as an octopus. I mean, who isn't glad to see Ed O'Neill turn up in fucking anything? What's kind of bizarre, though, is that even though all the stuff with Dory's parents and their flashbacks are suitably emotionally devastating, and I can only assume that anyone who's actually had to raise a child with a disability is going to get hit by a ton of bricks even more so, the stuff in the Institute, which is basically just a big aquarium, keeps feeling like it's about to get all Pixar third act scary and then doesn't. It's not so much that it doesn't work, it's just surprising. I know a bunch of the ending got supposedly rewritten because Blackfish happened and we all hate SeaWorld now, but it actually feels like there should have been more of that stuff, since the Institute seems perfectly primed to be one of those great Pixar third act villain destinations like Sid's Room or the Daycare Center from Toy Story 3, but instead it just turns out to be a visually interesting but neutral location. As in, yeah, the fish mostly want to leave, but there's a big breakout finale, but they were all pretty much going to get let go anyway, so whatever. But then again, maybe stopping to dwell on things outside of one pretty intense sequence set in one of those kiddie title touching pool things that all aquariums have would have involved slowing the narrative down too much, and like I already said, if this movie spent any more time than it already does contemplating exactly what it must be like for Dory to live as Dory, this whole thing turns from a nice kids movie into fucking Memento, and I don't think Disney wants that. In terms of Pixar sequels overall, Finding Dory probably most compares to Monsters University, which I contend was still really underappreciated, by the way, in as much as it's not as good as the original, but it's doing something so different on its own that it approaches greatness in its own right, just in an alternative way. I was already an adult when the first movie came out, so I don't really know how this is going to play if you're one of these people who saw Finding Nemo in grade school and now you're in college or about to be and you've been waiting on a sequel like my generation waited on Star Wars movies. But for what it's worth, I was really into it and I recommend it. Check this one out.